Hey guys, on last week's video, we had a request to talk about burnout. I have Steve Bell here with me today, who's a longtime retired Dallas police officer, and I'll kind of let him tell you briefly on what he does now.
Hi there, guys. Like Clint said, I'm retired from Dallas Police Department. I 34 years there and retired and decided to reinvent myself, and so went back and got my master's in counseling, and now I'm a licensed professional counselor uh, with a state license, and also am a provider with the ATO program with the Dallas Police Association.
On last week's video, somebody chimed in on the comments. I had asked for comments and criticism or topics. Somebody posed burnout, so that's what we're going to try and cover briefly for you today. And then I will have Steve on again, and we're going to talk about getting help outside your EAP, because I get a lot of questions about that as well. So on burnout, I know everybody knows what the slang term or what the word is, but is there a hard and fast kind of definition of what you would say burnout?
Well, obviously burnout is used in a lot of different areas. It applies in a lot of different job descriptions. But if you look at the definition, the actual true definition, then it's just basically a it has nothing to do with you no longer like the job. It's just that the job has gotten the best of you,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever those circumstances look like, then is where you start looking for if lack of a better way to put it, the fix. In other words, what is it that's specific to that job that's creating the burnout? And so there's where you go immediately and start trying to readjust your life in that respect.
Have you ever? I've always heard a rumor, or do you give any validity, or is there truth to? There's some overall benchmarks of burnout, 7, 14, 20 year marks. Have you heard those? I know I hit one personally at about 6 or 7 years in patrol. I couldn't get off days off. We were shorthanded. I couldn't get days off. I was stuck on deep nights trying to get the best days off I could. That affected me being able to be home with my family. I hit burnout pretty good and was able to go into CID, and it's like I started fresh career over again for a period of time. Are those benchmarks 6, 7 years, 14? Any validity to those?
Yeah, for sure. Uh, all right, real quick. The You're in recruit school, and you're put through a lot, physically, mentally, emotionally. You don't realize just how much your life is going to change while you're there,
Mm-hmm.
and so you're totally consumed. You have this immediate goal. However long the academy is doesn't make any difference, and you're in it with you have a group of your cohorts, and so we're all in this together, and it's a teamwork,
Mm-hmm.
and that team effort becomes very integral as far as you thinking or realizing that you're going to survive this, and you take care of each other. Graduate from the academy, you go out, you're on training. The very first thing that you think about is, you want to prove yourself on the street. So, as far as a time issue, about 5 years. It's considered it takes about 5 years for you to actually get fairly proficient at being a street cop.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, at about that same time, then things do start coming naturally to you, and you get good at it. And so then you start suffering some of the byproduct of the days off issues, shift issues, obviously depending on the department, how they handle that, whether you work in an 8-hour shift, 10-hour, 12-hour, whatever the case might be. But then you also start recognizing that it's having an effect on your home life. In other words, things start changing there as well. By now, for instance, you have definitely fallen into that situation of where all of the what I refer to as your past life. In other words, you were a civilian at one point.
Mm-hmm.
You had some very long, fast friends, maybe even high school friends, and you look around, they're no longer around for whatever reason. And a lot of it, unfortunately, is that day by day this is reinforced that you no longer trust civilians. And it's justifiable because
It's us and them now.
yeah, it's us and them. And then you'll get a phone call from someone, for instance. I mean, this happened to me. Very dear friend of mine, younger brother, was in jail. I get a phone call at 2 in the morning. Well, I don't, so you know where that's going.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good.
Yes, sir.
So anyway, you develop that, and the word is, cynicism.
Mm-hmm.
But this creeps into your life daily, and it creeps in. It's so pervasive that you don't realize it's happening because it's just something that's continually reinforced every day.
In the speaking topics that you brought today, and I was looking through some stuff on Police One preparing for today, and in everything I looked at, your speaking points, Police One, and everywhere else, cynicism is the number one.
The number one, and as far as, again, I will say, you have the classic definition of burnout. Okay, that's collapse from a emotional standpoint, physical standpoint. Okay, but everybody understands that. But it's applicable more so as far as how you guard against it, or how you
Mm-hmm.
recognize it based on the individual profession and the nuances that go along with that.
Mm-hmm.
So things I just described and a lot more are the ones that add to or exacerbate the cynic, because cops are famous for being cynical.
Mm-hmm. From the job and then carrying that home to their family or
Carrying that home to the family.
their personal life in some way.
Right.
Okay. And I was going to go down quickly if some of these you want to hit on or talk about. Cynicism was number one. Symptomatic of burnout, having to drag yourself to work. I can remember this.
Mm-hmm.
6 years in, manpower was short. You could not get a day off. If there was a family event, you couldn't get a day off. And it's, do I call in sick and be dishonest about it, or do I miss yet another kid's birthday party or anniversary? Using alcohol or food to try and fix your problems. And it leads into, we'll talk about, policeone.com has a good list. Lack of control of your personal life, being isolated from family and friends, an unsatisfying assignment, being passed over for promotion, exposure to toxic work personalities, bureaucracy in the department.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've been on 5 or 6 years and the job gets easier for you, your focus may shift because you don't have to focus so much on the police work. Then you can open up and really see what's going on around you and maybe realize some of the politics or bureaucracy in the department, I guess.
Exactly. Right.
In the duality of the mind, having to treat everyone with professionalism. There's cameras everywhere now, but knowing that person may pull a knife or a gun at any moment, and I've got to be polite as I can, knowing they may try and kill me
Right.
at any moment.
Right.
What would you recommend to get past burnout? Is there cure-alls? Is there things that you think people can focus on to get past the burnout, or to maybe lessen the cynicism? Because cops are pretty jaded.
Well,
nature.
okay, recognizing why we are is a good first step. And now, let's don't get hung up on these terms and suggest automatically that they're negative terms, because to be real honest with you, it's a term.
Mm-hmm.
But what it really means is that you have learned survival skills, and these terms a lot of times are given to you by people that don't understand the job.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what you go through, and so it fits their definition. It fits look at there's about 100,000 law enforcement officers in the state of Texas,
Mm-hmm.
give or take.
Yes, sir.
Okay, look at the population of the state of Texas, and so the ratio there, very few people know really what you go through, and so out of ignorance of the job, out of political expediency, or anything along those lines, then certain labels will stick. In other words, it's because, for instance, cynic, being a cynic, carries a negative connotation.
So it's not a character flaw that someone has necessarily, as maybe it's a byproduct of a police officer having to compartmentalize seeing death, seeing bad things, walking in and seeing several bodies in a murder scene and having to compartmentalize that over a period of time can lead to some of these. It's not necessarily a character flaw inherently in their
By no
person.
means.
It's a byproduct of the job.
Exactly. But an uneducated person they want to make it a character flaw,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know what their agenda is.
Mm-hmm.
So that alone, right there, that begins the dialogue about the us and them.
Mm-hmm.
That puts you in that position, and it's a position that, quite frankly, if you have a chance to stop, think about it, say, well, gee, I guess I am a cynic.
Right.
And so you start questioning yourself. And so, have I become? And then,
Which is very difficult for law enforcement to admit sometimes is I'm flawed, or
exactly,
I'm a cynic, or I'm jaded, or
because the very next thing that you look at is when an officer realizes his vulnerability as a human being. Because up until that point, he, and I'm painting with a broad brush here, but he kind of gets the idea that, I pretty well have this, figured out.
we fix everything.
We fix everything.
Having us on our chest.
Yeah.
Well, I want to close with, I'll go through these quickly with some things to maybe get out of the burnout, or out of the rut, so to speak. Play harder than you work. Surround yourself with positive people. Take care of your basic needs, your health, exercising. Have hobbies unrelated to law enforcement, and volunteer somewhere. Go to a food bank, go to a shelter, go somewhere to your church, to give yourself another sense of accomplishment other than the career itself. Any of those that stand out to you, or personally you think?
I will, all right. Most of those fall under the umbrella of humanization. In other words, you need
Don't be a robot.
Right. You're not a robot. You are a human. You have vulnerabilities. And before long, if you don't take care of yourself in that respect, then you will become the label. But it's not
Sure.
It's not something you did on purpose, but it's something that by omission you allowed it to happen.
And I can say I made a point in my career to have friends outside the department, have hobbies. I think hobbies, you can't stress hobbies enough. If your entire life focuses around the police department, if the badge defines your whole career,
Mm-hmm.
then when the police department's in a bad way, you're going to be in a bad way
Right.
personally.
Right.
When the police department's successful, you will be. And your personal life really should be successful. I don't give a damn what's going on at the police department. My personal business, I'm going to manage independently.
Exactly.
I feel like, to me, I tried to really focus on, that's police, this is my life. Being a cop doesn't solely define.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's a term, and it'd be a direction that we could take, say, in a future conversation about this. It's that black and white world that cops live in. And once you begin to discover all the gray that exists out there, and the more you find out that, you know what, black and white it doesn't represent the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
And so personally for me, and this is strictly personal, but for me it had to do with education. I was 49 years old before I stepped into a college classroom, and by then I had become extremely cynical.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember exactly how many I had. Well, I had well over 20 years on the department.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point in time, I thought, this is all there is.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember exactly what what it was that spurred me on. But I looked around. I thought, okay, I've got this one pretty well figured out, but I'm way too young to. I know I'm way too young to have everything figured out, and so I decided that that was something that I hadn't done, that I was within my control, and so I just gave it a try. And before long, I realized this is working for me. It was helping me understand all that gray stuff out there that before then I approached everything with a black and white attitude.
And discovered there's actually something outside of being a cop.
There is definitely something outside of being a cop, and I'll leave you with this thought, and that is that counseling. One of the main things that you learn in counseling is if you view every problem as a nail, then obviously the only tool you carry with you is a hammer. And it doesn't take long to figure out that there's a lot more problems out there than just nails.
Sure. Wow. Very good. I'd love to have you back on to talk about getting help outside the EAP if you would
You bet.
be back on.
Mm-hmm.
And for doing this today, I wanted to give you one of my consulting coffee mugs or
Cool.
water mugs.
Yeah, cool. That's nice.
Thanks for the feedback and thanks for the topic on burnout. I hope this helps a little bit. If you guys have questions or comments, constructive criticism, PM me, email me, comment on the post. I look forward to hearing from everybody. Thanks again, sir.
Thank you for